There's nothing better than waking up connected to a purpose. Nothing like it, because that creates lasting fulfillment. And that's why we're here, is to connect to something bigger than us.
Welcome back to another episode of Keeping It Real Estate. I'm your host, Mike Roeder, and today we have Craig Siegel joining us on the show. And Craig is a best-selling author of the Reinvention formula. He's been a renowned keynote speaker, coach. He's the host of the CLS Experience podcast. And Craig is also a TEDx speaker, or has spoken on TEDx, and a 7-time marathon runner. So with that, Craig, welcome to the show.
My goodness, what a lovely introduction. It's nice to be on the other side of those for a change. Thank you so much for having me. I'm pumped. There's no place in the world I'd rather be than right here with you. Let's have some fun. Let's get nuts.
That sounds like a plan. Well, I would love for you to start out with your background. I listened to your TEDx talk this morning. Really, really intriguing and inspiring. Why don't you share a little bit about your background and also just how you reinvented yourself as you went along your journey?
So basically I had 2 lives. One was prior to the pandemic, and then one was post-pandemic. So prior to that, I was growing up. I didn't exactly know what I wanted to do with my life. I went to college because that's what I was supposed to do. And then I graduated, and then I ended up on Wall Street. I was infatuated with stocks, like to make money. And I got really, really, really excited about that career path. And I spent 13 years on Wall Street. But also when I got to Wall Street at the time, I was very inexperienced. I also stumbled upon personal development, which is a pivotal life moment for me. And I just became absolutely obsessed with understanding we could reprogram our mind, we could develop confidence, we could learn how to build rapport, we could change our perspective, all these things. And so I utilized that to have a lot of success on Wall Street for 13 years. I was doing the stock thing for a while, which was a lot of fun until it wasn't. Obviously, a lot of unpredictability and stress. And then I pivoted from that and I started my own business, my own company in finance, basically providing working capital and loans to businesses across the country. While it was lucrative and I was having a lot of success, and I put that in quotations because on the outside, everything looked great. I was young, I was making money, a pretty girlfriend, but I was miserable. And it wasn't always like that. But towards the end, I started to find myself a gladiator in the wrong arena. Essentially, I was very out of alignment, where I wouldn't have changed a thing on my journey. I just started to develop this yearning that I was here for something much more. And I believe that we all are. And it's everyone's individual journey and so forth. I just was unable to put it together for quite some time because, as you can imagine, on Wall Street with your own business, 300 miles an hour every single day. And then I started running marathons, and that was really pivotal for me because I had never been a runner before. In fact, you couldn't pay me to run. Now I'm signing up to run marathons, and I'm really starting to develop a new sense of confidence and really start to find myself. But I was still at my business. And then bang, lockdown, pandemic, shut down my office for what I thought would be 2 weeks. And I just got really, really quiet, and I just connected. And I was able to block out the ego, the opponent, and I was able to really connect to creator. And I started drawing upon these divine downloads, divine inspiration. And I was like, of course, I had been obsessed with personal development for 15 years. I just didn't think I was worthy of turning that into a career until I realized this is much more than just a passion. I believe this is my assignment. And so from having business strategies and success, I put together a very intentional strategy. I had no personal brand. I had no following, no celebrity friends, nothing at the time, but I felt very connected to this. And so I created a 10-lane highway with each lane representing a different way to make an impact and do business. Coaching, speaking, big podcast, book deal, TED Talk, community, all the things. And then I reverse engineered and I said, can I really do this? And that's when the imposter syndrome came in, and I considered the cost of inaction. And for me, I made it so real for myself that I would have actually rather died than chosen to go back and be miserable. And so I leaned in, Mike, and for the first time in my life, I was in alignment. And the creator liked that. And over the last 3.5 years, the brand's exploded, the CLS brand, speaking all over the world, just spoke at the UN, launched our book, as you mentioned, the Reinvention formula, hit Wall Street Journal, USA Today bestseller, TED Talk, podcast, top 0.05% in the world, community coaching, all the things. Left Wall Street for good, and this is it for me in some capacity for the rest of my life, and we're just getting warmed up. Also planning a wedding in September, so it wasn't only a career reinvention, also a life. Probably a bit of a long-winded answer, but I imagine now your listeners have a ton of context.
Well, that's amazing. And congrats on the engagement and the wedding coming up here. Super excited for you on that. A lot of information there and a bunch of questions that I have.
Let's
First
dive
off,
in. Yeah.
yeah, you said you had time to disconnect, when everything shut down because of COVID. Sounds like you took some time off, or had to take some time off because your business was shut down, and you were able to connect, with yourself and what you really wanted. Would you recommend that for everyone out there, whether they have a career or a business, to take time and kind of reflect on where they're at, what brings them fulfillment, where they want to go? Would that be a recommendation of yours?
I can't recommend it enough, if I'm being honest, because see, here's the thing. When you're just in your grind and in your masculine energy, just getting stuff done day after day, you can't really connect and receive downloads because you're so in it. So you actually have to create time in your calendar to create white space where you can just connect, flow, and be that channel for downloads to come through. Downloads about your destiny, your journey, what brings you fulfillment, why you're here, what your gifts are, how to share them with the world, how to monetize them, and unapologetically make a lot of money. So yeah, even if things are going well for someone listening today, I cannot encourage you enough. Create time, whether it's going on a walk, meditate, whatever your thing is, create time to just connect and allow the downloads to come through. Those are the ideas that actually move the needle and can change the world.
I absolutely love that. And Dan, my business partner, and I have been trying to do that time block. So we actually have time to think, about ourselves, about our families, about our business. And like you said, when you're in the grind, and you're responding to email after email, or you're having meeting after meeting, a lot of times it's hard to fit that in unless you intentionally block out that time. Craig, I would love to talk a little bit more about your TED Talk. In that TED Talk, you stated that the world wants for us to be us. I'd love to hear what does that mean to you, and why did you say that?
To me, that means to live an authentic life. And I speak from great contrast because I spent about 35 years living an inauthentic life. I created this persona, brother, of what I thought the world wanted to see me as: Wall Street guy, make a certain amount of money, specific relationships. But it wasn't true to me. And so I got so caught up in that movie, that narrative, if you will. And that's one of the reasons why I began to get burnt out, because that wasn't the real, raw, strange, authentic me. And so when I reinvented myself, there was no guarantee that this thing would explode. But I made one guarantee to myself, and that was for the first time in my life, I would show up to the world as the real, raw, strange, authentic cat that I am. It won't be for everybody, and that's okay. The right people will gravitate, and the universe will filter out the message, so to speak. And ironically enough, that's when the world really began to see me. And so, what I mean by that is that all the creator really wants is for everybody to channel the gifts that were given to them and share them with the world. And obviously, unapologetically monetize them as well and so forth, but share without an agenda, share without needing recognition, utilize the DNA that we have. Everyone has their own unique individual light, and the light won't be the same as it is tomorrow or this moment. It will only be this moment. So it's on us to actually discover or uncover who we really are, what makes us tick, what we're good at, what our purpose is, and share that with the world. And when you have the courage to do that, that's when you'll receive a ton of assistance, surprise support. The creator will meet you halfway, divine assistance, if you will. So I know it takes a lot of courage. It's probably one of the toughest things people will do, is to actually go after their dreams on their terms and become who they feel they're destined to be.
I absolutely love that. And I love how you said, it's probably not for everyone. It's not going to, go well with everyone. And that's okay. Be yourself. There's going to be people that really enjoy it. There might be some people that don't, but it's going to give you that much more confidence and push you upwards. You also said that 65% of Americans are searching for a new job, and only 25 or 20% are finding purpose, according to your stats in the TED Talk. Why do you think this is, and is there anything that our listeners and us can do about that to really change those stats and not be a part of that?
If you think about that stat for a second, isn't that so alarming?
It is.
Only 20%, Mike, are finding purpose in the work that they do. It's terrible. I think that most people are playing way too small. We have another show that we just started on LinkedIn called Playing Small is Canceled. I know it's cancel culture and so forth. I think that's one thing we should definitely cancel, is playing small. I believe we're all here to make a massive impact, contribute, make a lot of money, have a lot of fun. But oftentimes throughout society, or the ego, our opponent gets the best of us, we settle and we don't push ourselves past our comfort zone, and we don't chase our dreams. And as a result, we find ourselves in a dead end job or something that just doesn't light us up for probably longer than we should. That's where those stats come from. And so the way to stretch yourself is to constantly leave your comfort zone. If you have a passion, if there's something you like to do, try it out in the weekends. Start a side project, a side hustle, something. But find what you feel connected to and what you believe your gifts are, and share those with the world. There's no better high in the world. And I'm talking the best sex or the best restaurant you ever ate at. Those are good too, but those are temporary moments in the physical world. There's nothing better than waking up connected to a purpose. Nothing like it, because that creates lasting fulfillment. And that's why we're here, is to connect to something bigger than us. And so I think a lot of people settle. They don't realize that they have a choice, that they could choose a different narrative. It took me 35 years to figure that out. Better late than never. And so I think that's why the stats are so alarming. And so, the name of the TED Talk was changing how we believe reinvention to actually be, right? Reinventing reinvention is the title. So when I say reinvention, I think people sometimes get scared or intimidated. Like, I don't want everyone to just start over. You're never really starting over, right? But what I do want people to do is take the journey back to themselves, the authentic self. Come home. What do you want to do? What lights up your soul, right? What do you feel called to? What are you connected to? And that's what I mean by reinventing, reinvention, and so forth. And that's how we change the trajectory of the stats, is we start leaving our comfort zone, stop playing it safe, and start getting into alignment with what we feel connected to.
Got it. I love that. And are there any other small tips that you can give our listeners for getting out of their comfort zone? I know you say try to get out of your comfort zone every single day, but anything that we can do to make that more achievable?
Yeah, three words: chase the butterflies, right? Every time that you feel a little something that scares you, that's exactly what you're supposed to be doing, because once you conquer that, that ascends you to your next level of expansion. Everyone has different levels and so forth. So, for example, I run marathons, stuff like that. Stuff scares the hell out of me. Even speaking on stages sometimes, I still feel a little uncomfortable. But every time I conquer that, I have a new level of growth, like a higher ceiling and a higher floor. So, there's things in life that scare us. Those are the things that we should be conquering. That's actually a message. The pressure, we could convert that into expansion. If we don't convert it, and we know there's things that we want to do, but we're scared, then it turns into stress, and stress kills, right? So push yourself out of your comfort zone. If you're not like strung out, or if you don't feel a challenge at all, that's good feedback that you're playing it way too safe. So start just pushing the boundaries a little bit. Go towards the edge of your capabilities and push a little bit further. That'll be you leaving your comfort zone, and it will create new levels of expansion for you because you felt the fear and you did it anyway. These are really, really important traits to possess.
Got it. I love that. And obviously, you said you've ran quite a few marathons, and I believe you weren't super excited about running when you got into marathons. And I think I know the answer to this, but what was the reason you jumped into running marathons?
I was in a pretty dark season a few years back.
Mhm.
Right before the pandemic, I was totally out of alignment, like I mentioned earlier, in my profession, my career. A couple things happened at once. I just got out of a toxic relationship at the time, which is never fun. My best friend, my dad, had just got diagnosed with cancer. He's still battling. And I just was not in a good place. I started drinking a little bit more than I'd like to admit, but I didn't stay there too long. I was looking for something to, I was looking for purpose at a season that I desperately needed something. And something called me to just go for a 2 mile run one day. I'd always lifted weights, I'd always been to working out, but never running. I went for that 2 mile run and I was humbled. I couldn't believe that I struggled to run 2 miles without stopping. I was like, am I out of shape, or am I just mentally out of shape? Then I became obsessed with learning how to be better at running. And there's something so beautiful and pure about the sport of running. It's really just the voice in the head. As long as someone can physically put one foot in front of the other, it's really just conquering the ego, the opponent that wants you to play small, get on the other side. And to me, that's so applicable and transferable to other areas of life. So I found running in probably a dark season of life, and it kind of saved me, gave me an opportunity to really sink my teeth into something. And then I utilized those feelings of that expansion to eventually reinvent myself, and the rest of this is history. So I'm just very romantic and emotional about the sport of running.
Got it. And, let's rewind it a little bit. So, worked on Wall Street for quite a long time. How did your experience on Wall Street really prepare you for building CLS and impacting millions of lives of others? Have you taken quite a few skills from that career and implemented it into what you're doing now?
For sure. I would say discipline, consistency,
Mm-hmm.
commitment, all those things are life hacks, really. Those are a lot of my superpowers. It's funny because those superpowers that I just mentioned to you, commitment, consistency, discipline, they're available to everybody. Most people don't leverage them. So between that and then obviously business experience and so forth, learning how to sell yourself and close and all that stuff, yeah, I brought a lot of that stuff. It's just that now I'm essentially selling myself. I'm the product, right? I help people remove limiting beliefs, connect to something bigger, do a lot of good in the world, be kind, and business success. So the product might have changed, so to speak, but a lot of the attributes that make us successful, I always like to say, it's never the arena that made Michael successful. It's not real estate, right? You made you successful, and a lot of those skills or characteristics that you possess are transferable to other arenas as well.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And before you were talking about chasing the butterflies and just do that every single day, with discipline, consistency, commitment, if you can follow through on things that you're promising yourselves, things as small as waking up, to your first alarm instead of hitting snooze, all those little things are going to add up and they're going to, push your consistency, your discipline, your self-worth up significantly.
I agree. Do you run it all?
I have lower back issues, so I stopped running about a year and a half ago after I had back surgery. But I typically work out about 6 days a week, and it just sets me up for a fantastic day. When you
Good.
miss a workout, it's just the day's off.
The
So
best, right?
yeah,
Perfect. Great way to start today too. Conquer something hard, check it off the list, get momentum. It's
yep,
great.
exactly. It really is. In your TEDx, you also talked about freed, and for our listeners, unfamiliar, could you elaborate on what that means to you and how that can benefit people?
Yeah. So I like to create frameworks and so forth when doing stuff. For me, that makes it easy to remember. So find, remove, elevate, expand, and deliver. And each one has a little bit of a different description. When it comes to reinventing yourself, you want to find that one thing that you love to do and really double down on that. Find what that is that you love to do, right? And these are the things that we find ourselves to be connected to because we really love them. Then we want to remove the limiting beliefs that are inevitably going to come. Limiting beliefs plague most people. Oh, you can't do that. It's too late. You're too old. Who's going to want to listen to you? Et cetera, et cetera. So let's remove those. Then let's elevate this exact thing that we love to do. Let's work on that. Let's really double down on it. Let's expand that and turn it into a business model. So we find the thing that we're connected to, move the limiting beliefs, double down on it, and then learn how to monetize that and then deliver that to the world without an agenda, not needing recognition, to just share this idea. And that's when really, really, really good stuff happen. And so I think most people probably struggle with the first one, if I'm being honest, just to find something that you love to do, whatever that is for you. And then let's build upon that. I believe in life, we should absolutely go for it all. Our desire should be to have it all. The career we're absolutely obsessed with, the purpose, the relationships, the money, the fitness, the health, all of that. So many people are settling across the board. Why would somebody settle for a job that they don't love? My guess is because they don't think they have another choice or because they're making good money. But what if you can actually do what you love and make good money? We're going to spend a third of our life in our career, another third sleeping. So you better love what you do and take it from me because I spent a long time not loving what I do. So this is a little bit of a framework where people can start to identify what it is that they love to do, how to expand upon it, how to remove the inevitable limitations, really, really deliver this to a world and monetize it as well. If you're anything like me, a good framework helps you remember things.
And you also talk about, the comeback being the favorite part of people's
Mm.
journeys, when you're talking to people. And also, just having that awareness and being able to realize when you're stuck or when you're at the bottom. What advice can you give to those that are struggling or that may not be aware of, being stuck or being at the bottom?
If you're not aware of being stuck or being on the bottom, I would also ask yourself, are you really happy? Are you really fulfilled? If this was it for you, are you happy with your legacy? Did you make that impact? Did you contribute to the world? Do you have great relationships? If the answers across the board aren't like a hell yes, that's probably good data or feedback that there's a lot more for you out there to conquer, to accomplish, and to share with the world. And so if anyone is stuck and they do realize it, look, it's your race, your pace. You cannot have a pity party and remain in victim consciousness for very long. I would say to that person that is how's that working out for you? And the reality is beating yourself up will do nothing. So give yourself a little bit of grace. Accept where you're at in your journey. Doesn't mean you have to approve it, but accept it. And now that we can kind of detach from that baggage and let it go, now we can shift all our energy and focus onto what happens next. What's the next move? Where can we shift our focus and energy? And just like that, we could stack magical moments. We could be very present in every activity. I'm not worried about my 4 o'clock, what happened before. It's just me and you right now. And when you're so present, you build that connection and this rapport going. That's where the miracles begin to happen. So step by step.
I love that. Accept where you're at in the journey and then what comes next. Figure out your next steps. Let's talk a little bit about goal setting, Craig. What do you do when you're setting goals? Any tips to ensure that you're staying on track and that you're achieving, what you're looking to achieve?
Yeah, I think you should be very intentional about your goals because you can't hit a target you can't see. I like to say marry the process, divorce the outcome. So I like to set really big, audacious, scary goals. And then I like to divorce from that and then reverse engineer and marry the process, right? Because the process isn't always the sexiest. Sometimes it's the nitty gritty. It's going the extra mile. It's some of the little things. And you could break it down into time frames, right? Maybe it's quarterly goals or monthly goals or whatever the case may be. But you want to set goals that are big enough to scare you and stretch you, but also reasonable enough that you can accomplish them, right? I never liked realistic. I just don't like that word because I always think big and I'm delusionally optimistic. Set really, really big, audacious, scary goals that make you feel some type of way, reverse engineer, divorce from that, and then marry the process. And let's figure out how do we bridge the gap from where we're sitting and where that goal is standing. And then let's collapse time.
Got it. I love it. And I think that also helps push you out of your comfort zone. I mean, if you're setting those big goals, you're going to be out of your comfort zone and it's going to help with everything else as well. Why don't you tell us or speak a little bit about a particularly, memorable interview that you had on the CLS Experience? Any really good interviews and anything that really is stuck with you?
I think all the interviews have. If you look at the roster, we've had on some of the biggest names in the world, from celebrities, entertainers, athletes, entrepreneurs, thought leaders. One that just straight off the cuff, since you asked me, that comes to mind is the late Suzanne Summers. I'm sure you're familiar, one of the biggest celebrities back in the day. And I was fortunate enough to have a beautiful conversation with her about her journey and about her mindset before she passed, and just a beautiful soul. She was on the TV show and then she got fired and just a lot of ridicule, and she reinvented herself and kind of came up with the thigh mask there. And, one of the most recognizable names of our time. Just the way that she handles adversity. And it's funny because one thing I've learned from interviewing some of the world's greats is that nobody is always motivated, period, end of story. But the greats, they know how to really connect to something and then create standards, and they utilize their standards over their feelings. And so, again, we're not going to be motivated every single day, but if you hold yourself to a specific or high standard and you revert back to that, kind of like a Navy SEAL would in training, that's how you continue to change the world and do really big, epic stuff. So I love all the conversations. I'm very passionate about the podcast. The one with Suzanne Summers came to mind when you asked me.
Got it. Thanks for sharing that. And
How
for
about
our
you?
listeners,
I'd love to ask you.
Yeah, for myself, we do a lot of multifamily podcasts, not as much so on the mindset side, but I would say, multifamily, we recently had Neil Bawa on our podcast, and, he's a very analytical guy, and just the details that he dives into were absolutely phenomenal. Just really expanding what you're looking at when you're taking a look at a multifamily investment. So that one really hit home for me.
You're really into that stuff, I could tell.
Love it. You bet. You bet. So, before we part ways, Craig, I would love for you to give our listeners a book recommendation or a podcast recommendation, something that's really made a positive impact on you and stuck with you. Any recommendations there at all?
A book recommendation. Right now, I'm really into my spirituality, Kabbalah. I'm reading the Zohar, which is probably a little deeper than most people are expecting. So I don't know if I can recommend that right now. But something that I think is universal is The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale. Just a classic. Just really how to cultivate faith, courage, and also keep a positive mindset. You just read or listen to that book and you just feel like everything's going to be all right. And it always will be, right? So you just want to stay in a very high vibration. I understand the high achievers that I'm sure in your audience and you as well, and myself. When you aim big and you play big, there's always often obstacles and challenges, right? But if you have the right mindset and you're vibrating on a certain level, kind of looking down at the problems as just small opportunities to tackle. But when you have a low vibration, you're constantly looking up at the problems, right? It's like you're a fireman constantly putting out fires. So when you're able to elevate your vibration, your frequency, you just have a ton of momentum with life. You're always positive, not like toxic positivity, but there's always a solution to every problem, so to speak. And if there's not, then it'll work out. But I think that's really important amongst other things like, business, NLP, spirituality. That particular book, one of my personal favorites, The Power of Positive Thinking. And then you asked me about a podcast. I don't listen to as many podcasts as I used to. Just have so much going on right now with the business and the brand. Um, but a podcast that comes to mind, let's say my friend Ed Mylett. It's a good podcast. John Gordon as well, another friend of mine, wrote the forward to my book. Anything that has to do with personal development. I like entrepreneurship as well. And also right now I'm really into spirituality. So it's a spiritually hungry as well as a good one.
I love that. Ed Mylett, fantastic podcast. John Gordon, actually had him on our podcast a while back. Phenomenal gentleman as well.
Phenomenal.
And he really is. And, your comment on the book, Power of Positive Thinking, had just saw a post the other day of a real estate investor that we really look up to. And one thing that he does is he really tries to consume positive articles, positive reading. So when he's reading articles and he's taking a look at content, he wants to make sure that it's positive for the most part. And I just thought that was a great tip because there's so much negativity out there and that affects the way that you think and the way that you act. So the more positive that you can put into your life, the better.
There's always a choice, right? Optimistic or pessimistic. Trust me when I tell you, positive mindset can extend your life. There's something just beautiful about having a positive outlook. It's much more fun.
I completely agree. Well, Craig, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. If our listeners want to reach out and get a hold of you or follow what you do, how can they do that?
Yeah, thanks for asking, brother. Anywhere on social media at Craig Siegel _CLS. Anywhere you listen to podcasts, the CLS Experience. Anywhere you buy books, the Reinvention Formula. If you like inspirational nuggets throughout the week, totally free. You can join our texting community. Just text 917-634-3796. Text the word Michael so that I know you heard here. Come say hello. I love to engage. I love to interact.
Well, thanks so much, everyone, for tuning into another episode of the Keeping It Real Estate Show. If you haven't already, make sure to visit our website, granitetowersequitygroup.com. Fill out the Contact Us form, and we'll make sure that we keep any investment opportunities in front of you. We'll send you out weekly newsletters with all the real estate news, and we'll make sure to continue to bring great guests on the show like Craig. So thanks again.